What you are looking for is in the library. Is in the library. Meow.
Welcome to Keep It Fictional, a weekly podcast for book lovers by book lovers. Build your to-be-read list with Sadie, Liz, Virginia, Fiona, and Corrine from the Port Moody Public Library. Warning, this podcast contains strong opinions and may cause an increase in your library holds list.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Keep It Fictional. It's a podcast for book lovers by the book lovers at the Port Moody Public Library. I'm your host today. My name is Liz, and today's topic is one that is near and dear to me. Maybe not so much for our panel, but we'll get into that very shortly. I want to say hi to Virginia and Corrine and Sadie, who will be joining us today. Now, with regards to today's topic, you either love them or you hate them. We're going to be talking about some highly intelligent creatures that have straddled the line between being wild and their domestication for centuries, almost always for their game. Now, from short-haired tabbies to long-haired ragdolls, from chatty Siamese to the hairless Sphinx, there is a cat for everyone. Or is there? As we'll find out on today's panel, I am sure, as with most things on Keep It Fictional, there are very strong opinions about today's topic. And if you haven't figured it out by now, come on. We're talking about cats, of course. Gotta love them. That's my opinion anyways. I know not everybody's a fan of cats, and that's okay. But I thought it'd be fun to talk about some books this week and see whether maybe the stories that involve cats change anybody's opinions, either for the better or for the worse. Virginia, what did you read for today's episode?
What didn't I read for today's episode? I feel like I went on a whole journey this week and last week with a whole bunch of cats, so many cats. And also it feels like this is like cozy books take two, because a lot of cat books are kind of like cozy books, and you know me and cozy books, so yeah, it's tough. I had a few titles in mind, including I was going to read Invisible Kitties by Yu Yo-Yo, translated by Jeremy Tiang. I think it's a book that Emma talked about on her most anticipated fall reads. I was going to read it because it claimed that it was for fans of Calvino's Invisible Cities. Now, I'm very gullible when it comes to comms. You say Calvino, I'm going to read it. So I read about 60 pages. And that book is so cat. Like, that's the only way I could describe it. It is so cat. I think if you're a cat lover, if you're a cat owner like Liz and Sadie, I feel like you will love it. And you will understand those very cute, like, I don't know, comparisons about cats. Like, they describe cats at like really long trains that extend from room to room. They're like everywhere. Like if you live in an apartment with a cat, it's more like you're living in a cat's apartment within your own apartment or whatever. And there's lots of like kind of comparisons like that. Cats that are growing cats that are falling like rain. Anyway, it's very cat and just a little too cat for me. So I had to change my plan halfway through. And I was very tempted, Corrine, to go just reread Master and Margarita because there's a cat in that one, right? You understand. But I didn't. And then I was just like, okay, what can I do? So I ended up reading two cat books. For a person who does not really have any feelings about cats, I ended up reading two cat books. One of them was very much my style. It's about a really like, you know, kind of sad, depressing story about a man living with the trauma of being an outsider as a refugee and also as a gay man in Finland, and has a talking cat in it that he met at a gay bar that is singing Shearer when he met the cat. And then he invited the cat home and the cat ended up moving in, and the cat seems to be very charming at first, the talking cat, but it turns out to be like a very, very mean cat, very entitled, homophobic, xenophobic. It's just like the worst. And I feel like maybe that's just a little too much for today's episode. So then I have to change plan. But I do recommend that book that's called My Cat Yugoslavia by Patim Statovsky, translated by Jack Hassan. It's a great book. So I would recommend it. But because it's not a mean cat, and I feel like, maybe I don't want to do a mean cat because then my book friends will have something to say about me. So on to book number 3, which is what I read. And just to be clear, The title does not reflect my feelings towards cats or cat books at this point or at any given point of my life, but the book is called Give Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura, translated from Japanese into English by Eric Selland. Genki Kawamura is a novelist, is a children's book author, also a director, screenwriter, and a producer. And too bad Emma is not here because he's most famous for producing the anime Your Name, which was a weird coincidence because Emma was just talking about it the other day. Anyway, so what are you willing to do in order to live another day? Our unnamed protagonist has just found out that he has an incurable illness and that he may only have a few more months to live. Shock and numb from the news, not something that you can just kind of get over. He's not really sure what to do. And he thought, you know what? I'll do what people do in movies. I will come up with a bucket list, 10 things that I want to do before I die. But as he was writing this, he finds it's just so ridiculous, such a ridiculous and futile exercise. And he has a hard time concentrating and making himself do this. And while he was trying to write his list, he has a visitor. A guy comes in to his house in a Hawaiian shirt. The guy introduces himself as the devil. And he has an offer for our protagonist. Of course he does. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your bad news. And yeah, actually, you're going to die tomorrow. You don't really have a couple months left. But don't worry, I'm here to offer you a way out. I, being the devil, can extend your life. You can live one extra day if you are willing to make one thing disappear from the world. One thing for each extra day in your life. Now, our protagonist always thought that when the end comes for him, he would be graceful. He would be able to accept it. But he is still really young and he doesn't really want to die. He wants to live. And then he started thinking, well, there's like a million frivolous things in the world. Like we make so much stuff. Surely there are things that can go away and won't really have much effect, right? So yeah, sure, I'll take the deal. Really? Wow, that's fantastic. I can't believe it. I mean, all this time, I only have about like 100 or so people who would say yes to this. That's great. And that kind of surprises our protagonist because he thought that more people would be willing to take the deal so that they can live longer. And so the devil said, all right, well, first thing to disappear. And he looks around and he's like, oh, yes, telephones. Let's make telephones disappear. And that's when our protagonist realizes that he hasn't read or asked for the fine print because he doesn't actually get to pick what to disappear in exchange for one extra day in his life. The devil is the one with the power to choose. So each day, he has to decide, is he going to accept the deal, knowing whatever it is that the devil named will disappear from the world. And as our story unfolds, we learn more about our protagonist's life, why he became a postal worker, why he chose that profession. We learn about his cat, Cabbage, and how he got his name. We met an ex-girlfriend. We learn about the relationship that drifts apart and maybe could use some closure. We learn about his family and why he and his father don't talk anymore and have become estranged. And with each object, as he considered whether it is something that people can live without, he realizes that everything exists for a reason. Yes, it may not be something that we can see or predict, but everything means something to someone. It's the memories that we associate with these objects, and it's the stuff that brings people together. And the book will, of course, prompt a lot of contemplations about life in general, as you can imagine, for our protagonist and also for us readers. One of the things that he keeps thinking about that his mother says to him before is that in order to gain something, you have to lose something. And that may not be a particularly new insight, but sometimes we do need to be reminded that very often we only realize what things are important to us once we have lost them. And being a book about the end of life, of course, it also asks the question, what does it mean to live a life that you feel satisfied in the end? What does a life well lived really means? Is it really trying to fit as many things as you can into your life and get as many different experiences as you can with the time that you have got on earth? Or is it to learn to appreciate what you've got right now, to pay attention to the things, to the people that are around you, to see their value, even though maybe they're familiar, even though they're not extraordinary, but to recognize them and to spend the time with the things you have? Now, I haven't mentioned cats that much. Don't worry, there are definitely cats in this. Part of the reason is I don't want to spoil it because in the book, cats really play a pivotal role in kind of changing the way the protagonist think about things as he goes through this deal with the devil. And there's a lot of talk about cats. The devil plays with the cat. At some point, the devil turned the cat into a talking cat just for fun. And Cabbage, the protagonist cat, really, I think, helps him understand perhaps what's important. And that plays a huge role in the end. And that's part of the reason why I'm not talking as much about cats. But as they say, you may think you own cats, but that's not the way it is. They just simply allow us the pleasure of their company, according to the book. So like Corinne said about a couple weeks ago, when you talk about More Days at the Murasaki bookshop, it's a pretty straightforward book. It's a very quick read. It's not a demanding read. The ideas in it is not super earth-shattering, but it doesn't matter. You can see it from miles away. You're just going to be sobbing your head off at the end of the book. So yeah, so if you're looking for a cat book, I think I can see why this is the type of story that could become a bestseller. Apparently it's sold like millions of copies in Japan and it's been translated into many different languages. A fairly straightforward book, but for those who like to maybe reflect and contemplate about life for a little bit, you can check out Give Cats Disappear from the World by Genki Kawamura, translated by Eric Selland.
Thanks, Virginia. Great book. And all three titles that you mentioned sound great. A little something for varying tastes there. I also love how you clarified that we don't own cats, because you initially said that Sadie and I both own cats, but they cannot be owned. Yeah, if anything, it's the reverse, but I digress. I thought we'd change tack and maybe go for something a little less tear-inducing. And that would be the book that I'm going to bring to the table today. Now, in this book, if you were to ask someone on the streets of Kyoto, Japan, for directions to the Kokoro Clinic for the Soul, chances are they'd say they'd never heard of the place. It's located down an alley in a very run-down, dilapidated building, poorly lit, seems very questionable. You'd never know that a clean and modern-looking medical clinic was within, one that is staffed by a strange doctor prone to fits of laughter, as well as his brusque nurse. Now, the patients who find the clinic are all there because they're feeling troubled, sad, emotionally unwell, unsettled. After a brief interview with the doctor, all are surprised by what they are prescribed, and that is a cat. Yes, instead of medication, cure what ails you, you would be sent home with a cat to live with for a recommended amount of time. Now, this book is very fittingly called We'll Prescribe You a Cat, and it's by Ishida, and it was translated from Japanese by Madison Shimoda. Now, at the Kokoro Clinic, the patients are introduced to a variety of different cats, including Bee, Margot, Koyuki, Tank, Tangerine, and Mimita. And through having to care for them, their temporary humans learn not only how to care for a cat, but also to be kinder to themselves, to be more aware of their surroundings and how their actions affect others, and how simply the act of that care can be very introspective and also fulfilling for themselves. Now, although the patients are quite different, we meet a salaryman who is having difficulty dragging himself to work. He's disenchanted with his work, and it's really affecting him emotionally. There's a school-age girl with a social dilemma. And of course, especially at that age, these social dilemmas that can sort of make or break your standing, it's consuming her entire world. There's also an older man in the workplace who's finding that things have changed. He's got a new boss, and she's young, she's well-liked by her staff, and he's finding that, he's not liking her because she contradicts a lot of his workplace values. We also meet a fashion designer who feels like something is amiss in her life, despite her being incredibly successful in her line of work. And we also meet a geisha who is grieving a missing pet. She's having a very difficult time moving on, and this is holding her back in the rest of her life. Now, although these people are very different and come from different walks of life, it turns out that none of them are immune to the medicinal magic of their cats. Now, like Virginia was talking about earlier, this is a book where you see where things are going. You see the formula with each character's story. But if that is what you're looking for, if you're looking for something, I'd say cozy, perhaps formulaic, with a happy ending, feel good and positive, then this might be something you'd be interested in. Obviously, a book for cat lovers, but also if you enjoyed other cozy titles like we've discussed before on the podcast, like Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, and also the Kamagawa Food Detectives, which may be new to some of you. Again, not challenging, but still includes some reflection, perhaps for yourself, concerns well-being, might make you contemplate sort of where you're at, and might make you consider getting a cat for all of those therapeutic health benefits. So if you're looking for a simple, feel-good cozy, recommend this one. And I just wanted to mention as an aside, how amazing is the cover? I absolutely love the cover. So the North American edition, it's got a cat peering out of a pill bottle, looking super adorable. Who wouldn't want to take that home and take a dose of that every day? But also, I believe this is the UK version of Will Prescribe You a Cat. And it's got a prescription bottle being tipped over and a variety of different looking kitties tumbling out and gracefully landing to their feet. Again, please prescribe me a cat, even if it's just for the placebo effects. So again, We'll Prescribe You a Cat by Sho Ishida. Definitely recommend it for all the cat lovers out there. All right, so you've had two different perspectives here, one from the lukewarm to cats person.
So generous, lukewarm.
We're nothing but generous on KIF. One perspective from a cat lover. Now, before we hear what Corinne and Sadie think about their books and cats in general, just wondering, what are your favorite fictional cats, if any?
Virginia has actually already mentioned my favorite literary cat of all time, which is Behemoth from Master and Margarita, the ultimate cat of all cats, cigar chomping, Machiavellian evil, the devil cat in the absolute tour de force. So yeah, I don't think there's any greater cat than that.
Going back to my childhood, but also something that carries through every year for me. Every Halloween, I watch the classic 90s Halloween movie Hocus Pocus, and it features Binks, the talking cat who once was a person and was turned into a cat by the Sanderson sisters and is now cursed to stay in their house more than 300 years later, waiting for a virgin to light the black flame candle so that he can help get rid of the witches for good. So that is Thackeray Binks, the black cat from Hocus Pocus.
Also a very specific subgenre of catboy. Mm-hmm.
So I realized all of mine can be said that they're not really cats, but that's all I've got for you. The cat bus from Totoro. Not really a cat, but I'm going to call it a cat. Anyway, got a cat, got the word cat in it. Cat on Red Dwarf is one of my favorite. It's a British science fiction show, which I love so much. So campy. Cat on Red Dwarf. Again, is it a cat? Supposed to be a cat, but I don't know. Melf in Pokemon? Pokemons are not cats, but there's a cat Pokemon. So, you know. Again, that's all I got. Doraemon. Doraemon is a robot cat.
Is it a cat or is it a dog?
It's a cat.
But it's a robot.
It's a robot.
It's a robot cat.
It's a robot cat, yes.
And definitely not a dog.
No.
Okay, there was a part about that creature that surprised me. I think it was probably the robot part.
Yeah, I think it's the robot part, yes. Anyway, but it's the best pocket because there's so much stuff that he could just pull out anything from his pocket, including one of the things that I needed to become true is a portal. a door that he can pull out and he could just go anywhere, which can you just imagine? I can just go home now by the portal. Yes. Anyway, so those are my not cats.
I love all those choices. And I totally think that qualifies. They're cat adjacent. Absolutely. When I was a kid, I absolutely was obsessed with Garfield. I read every single Garfield book. I asked for this little 6-inch Garfield plushie from Santa, which I still have to this day. And he's like all loved to pieces. Gotta love any of the cats in the world of Studio Ghibli. So Cat Bus, Gigi from Kiki's Delivery Service. And then I think to round out my top 3, it was hard to choose. Goose or Chewie from Captain Marvel. They had to change the name Chewie from the comic books for obvious reasons when they did the Captain Marvel movie. So basically Orange Tabby, like my guy at home, except he's also a Flurkin. So highly protective and lots of teeth and tentacles when he's in Flurkin mode. So again, is he a cat? He's really a Flurkin, but anyways, I think that gets a pass too. Very interesting how even the non-cat lovers have their favorite cats. So I think that's kind of telling.
All of which are not actually cats.
Yeah, excuse me.
Cat adjacent.
But also we're forced to pick one, right? We're forced to pick one. So it's within the fictional cats. These are the ones that I would prefer, not like I love them.
Virginia, you had like 3 or 4. So
yeah, see, that's why it's so hard to pick, because it's just they all kind of like, like they're all not cat. I figured that if they're all together, then they make a cat.
2 of those are robots.
Yeah. One of them is a talking cat. One of them is a bus. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. See how hard it is.
Everything is a point of contention on Keep It Fictional, as our regular listeners will know, including what is a cat and what is not a cat. Anyways, moving on. Corrine, would you like to share your book today, as well as probably your opinion about cats?
Oh, I'm going to be good. Okay, to be fair, the book has a cat on the cover. I looked through like a blog review of someone talking about this book to be like, there's cats in this, right? Because oftentimes it's not as catvertised. And someone said, oh, yes, cat. Liz, please. It was great. People were like, oh, yes, the cats in the library. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm good. I cleared this with Emma, who was supposed to be the host for this episode. And honestly, if Emma was not here, I was going to talk about the book that she had chosen, She and Her Cat, which does have like cat POVs, which I feel like would have really nailed it. And so I cleared it with Emma. I'm like, I haven't read it. It's not technically about a cat, but there's a cat on the cover. And this person said it's about cats. My other option was to read one of the Warriors books by Aaron Hunter, which are about like cat warfare for children. And Emma said, no, this will be fine. Okay, so in total cat count of this book, there is 1. There is a cat-themed store that someone visits, and there is a cat in that kind of cat cafe store that gets pet. Is it about cats in any way? No. No, it is not. But I would argue that is not my fault. I did my due diligence in trying to hew closely to the theme and was taken down by whoever that blogger was. And I'm going to leave a really nasty comment on it saying there was only 1 cat and the cat on the cover. So in following my previous Keep It Fictional friends theme of quiet Japanese books that somehow have a cat that are a little bit repetitive and a meditation about the meaning of life and society, I have chosen the book What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Aoyama, translated by Alison Watts. This is a book that I talked about apparently in the 2023 most anticipated books of the year that I have now gotten to. I did buy this book. Yeah. A little late, but that's fine. Like I'm within a year of it. I purchased this book and I put it on my shelf and I was like, oh, you look so handsome. What a good looking book. Hanover Square Press. Very nice. There's a cat on the cover. Great cat action. Cat and book and plant and cup of tea. And then I never read it, but I was a little bit desperate. I was searching in the catalog and there was a heap of cat mysteries. And then there was this medical curiosity book that I really wanted to read, but it's called The Woman Who Ate Her Cat. And I was like, I probably shouldn't. But I read through the entire description. I was like, oh, this sounds incredible. And it's all about weird medical things. But I was like, I don't think the cat is making it out of this book alive. And it would feel kind of disingenuous to like, it's like doing a dog episode and like at the end it's like the dog dies. Like we're not doing a Marley and Me. So I wanted whatever cat started the book to kind of end the book in one piece. And everyone does. Everything's cool in this book. Again, it's just vibes. All of these books are just vibes, and that's fine. So this one, the kind of shtick is that in the Hattori Community House, which is kind of like a rec center or a community center, on the ground floor, there is a library. Now, people come to the community house for various things. There are very cheap classes in flower arranging or how to play Go or computer classes. And the library is perfect for people who have a little taste of what they want to learn more. If you go into the library, you'll probably be first greeted by the librarian in training, Nozumi Moringa. I hope that's right. My writing is a little skewed, who will, in a very flustered way, say, "Oh no, I can't help you. I have to take you to the librarian." The librarian is described in a way that haunts me because I can't quite picture what they're trying to say, but she is kind of described as Betamax from Big Hero 6 who eats cookies. So just keep that in your head, I guess, because that's all you're going to get. And every other description is more terrifying than the last. She's big, but I don't know if that means like tall, like a giant praying mantis type person, or like an egg, or like, I don't know. And they're constantly describing it as like she's up against the stack. So if you've seen like Spirited Away and you remember like the spider guy in the furnace, that's kind of what I kept picturing. And so this book took a weird turn for me that I don't think the author intended. Anyways, she's there. Her name is Sayuri Komachi. And in addition to getting you all the books that you want about Excel or about Go or about heaven knows what, she'll also give you a little bonus book that you might not expect. In addition to this book, she'll also give you a bonus gift. Don't get any ideas. She will give you a tiny felted object. Now, this might be in the shape of a frying pan or a tiny earth, and she will give you this as just a little present because apparently she spends most of her time at work just felting, which sounds great. That has not been our lived experience, but yeah, this sounds like a great gig. I think she has a customer a day and answers a very quick question and then goes back to her felting. Wow. So through the chapters of this book, we meet 5 people who are a little dissatisfied with their life or at a crossroads. We have Tomoka, who's 21, working as a women's wear associate, who feels a little lost. She's come from the country to the big city and graduated and kind of found her way into a department store where she doesn't really feel fulfilled by the work that she does. For this, our librarian prescribes Guri and Gura. Again, this is the mistake of my handwriting rather than the author's. And it's a charming little picture book about 2 little mice, I think, who go and find an egg in the forest. And it changes her life. There's also Rio, 35, who's an accountant at the department of a furniture manufacturer, which is just a sentence that I want to say over and over and over again, who has cherished a dream to open an antique store and is kind of mean to his girlfriend. For this, the librarian prescribes the Royal Horticultural Society, How Do Worms Work? A gardener's collection of curious questions and answers. And honestly, I would love to read the book, How Do Worms Work? Great title. Great title. And so on and so forth. In the 5 chapters, we follow different people, their life's problems, or something that's niggling away at them like a worm, and how the book helps them in unexpected ways to solve the unease in their life. All the stories are loosely connected around the community center and the librarian, and they all include a little shift in perspective. What I like about kind of this genre of Japanese cozy fiction is that it's often not a huge radical change that people undergo. Sometimes it's just a matter of a shift in perspective. As Virginia said, appreciating what you have rather than constantly bemoaning what you don't. And I really think that's quite lovely. It's, again, like the other books mentioned, it's a little bit quiet, it's a meditation on life and what's really important. What I also really enjoyed is that, just like in real life, you sometimes find inspiration from books in the oddest of places. You don't necessarily need to read a self help book on how to solve your problems with your life and your general unease about your position in society. Sometimes you can just read Evolution, a visual record, or a lovely little book of poetry, and it can subtly change your life in ways that you didn't expect. What I also really enjoyed about this book is that each of the 5 chapters, is written in first person. So, which I thought was really interesting. I love first person books, and I just don't think people write enough of them, but that's my opinion. And I really enjoyed kind of getting into the head of each of these characters. It made their struggles feel a little bit more personal. And I really enjoyed the writing of this. So if you're, again, this episode has a theme, although I don't know what Sadie's going to bring to the cat table. To the cat, what do they live in? What do cats live in? They have like dens or trees? Like what? Nests? Covens?
To the Red Warriors, and you will find out.
I feel like I really screwed up here. Again, I learned nothing about cats. Someone visits a cat cafe and there's a cat and they're like, you need to learn how to like better manage your work-life balance. Thanks, cat. And not a single talking cat in the entire thing, which is very unexpected. But anyways, cat litter boxes. I don't know. I don't even know what I was talking about. I'm like, where do they live in the wild? Do they have a home base? Like if you've got a wild feral cat, do they have like a place? What do they live in? Do they build homes for themselves? Caves? Do they live in caves? Maybe I should have gone nonfiction this time. I clearly don't know enough about them. Anyways, what you are looking for is in the library. Meow.
Thanks, Corrine. You never disappoint. I mean, Sadie, I don't know how you're gonna to follow that up, but you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that not one of us came to Corinne's aid during her struggle just now.
Not a single one of you had a single word to say. You just let me flounder and trying to think of like what cat habitat is.
But I'm counting on the cat people.
Do they burrow in the ground? Anyways.
Oh, there are sand cats in the desert that do burrow in the ground. Yes.
Right? And like from Lion King, they lived in kind of like palatial cave structure.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. So between those two things, that is all cats. So they either burrow into the ground or they live in caves. I think that's very clear that we've figured that out. Okay. So surprisingly or not, I really struggled with this topic. I am, as listeners may or may not know, I am definitely a cat person. I grew up with cats. I love cats. My own cat, Caradwin or Cara, is almost 16 years old and has been in my life longer than both my husband and my child. And I'm pretty sure that Tyler has understood for years now that he does come after her. She knows that. He knows that. And that's just the way of things. So yes, I love cats. And you would think that this would have been an easy topic for somebody who loves cats. And I would have many, many, many cat books already in my repertoire that I could bring for this topic. But that is not true. Apparently, I don't read a lot of books that feature cats. So to prep for this episode, I ended up reading, similar to Virginia, I ended up reading 3 cat books. 1 fantasy and 2 mystery, one of which I'm not actually done yet. So 2.5. Say 2.5 books. And I do feel like there is a weirdly high number of mystery books and series that feature cats. I don't know why. We kind of talked about this at the beginning. I don't know why. Anyways, today I've decided to talk about one of the mystery books that I read. Lulu Lewis has had a rough few months. Her husband, Simon, was recently killed in a hit and run, and Lulu is devastated. Her and Simon had been living on the main floor of her mother-in-law's house. But after Simon's death, Lulu can't stand to be there anymore. So she moves out, and in a spur-of-the-moment decision, she moves into a canal boat called the Lark. It's better there, she thinks. Less memories. She's still close to her old neighborhood, which is good, and she spends a lot of her time visiting her aging mother-in-law, Emily, who suffers from Alzheimer's and now lives in a home close by. She enjoys her visits with Emily, who some days remembers her and some days doesn't, but who is still very healthy, all things considered. One day, Lulu is gathering some herbs from her small garden when a calico tomcat wanders in. She starts talking to it, as many people do when they see cats and dogs, and she tries to get it to come to her boat so she can give it some water. She's rather surprised when the cat expresses that maybe a nice glass of wine would be preferable. He does not express this with meows or subtle headbutts. He expresses this with words. Lulu knows she must be having a very vivid dream, regardless of the cat, who introduces himself as Conrad, assuring her that this is very real and he is, in fact, talking to her. Dreaming or not, Lulu finally asserts that she must get on with her day, as she's expected to visit Emily that morning and she doesn't want to miss her visit. But she hesitantly asks if Conrad would like to accompany her. He would, he says. So the two of them set off for the nursing home. Emily is not having a good day. She seems very lost in the past and doesn't know who Lulu is. However, she still looks healthy and is in good spirits, talking about the delicious chocolates she was brought earlier in the week. She enjoys meeting Conrad, and one of the nurses even takes a picture of the three of them together, saying that it sometimes helps the patients remember people in their lives. Lulu leaves after her visit, promising she'll be back to visit the next day. When Lulu and Conrad, who Lulu now finally believes is not part of some weird dream, arrive at the home the next morning, one of the attendants awkwardly tells them that, unfortunately, Emily died during the night. Lulu is shocked. Apart from the memory loss, Emily was in good health. Lulu had just seen her the day before, and everything was fine. Emily was fine. What is even more shocking for Lulu is that she wasn't even called. She wasn't even told. She quickly learns that while she had been listed as Emily's next of kin, recently this information had been changed to her brother-in-law, Richard, who had been living in Spain and who Lulu hadn't seen since Simon's funeral months earlier. It made sense. Richard was Emily's son, a blood relative, while Lulu was not. However, it still seems strange to Lulu that this had been changed so close to Emily's death. The more Lulu thinks about it, more things seem a bit strange too. The cause of death had been listed as Alzheimer's. However, Lulu knows that Emily did not appear close to death the day before. As a retired police detective, Lulu's intuition kicks in, and she starts to wonder if maybe there's more behind Emily's death than it seems. So with Conrad in tow, Lulu begins her own private investigation into the people closest to Emily, including the many friends and family members who visited her in her final days. When she learns that Emily never had the chance to change her will after Simon died, and that her entire multi-million-dollar estate will now be going solely to Richard and his new wife, Maria, Lulu begins to think that maybe she has found a motive for murder. However, it won't be as easy to prove this point, especially since Richard refuses to have an autopsy done, and it doesn't look like Lulu has any right to insist one is done, even after calling in the help of her former partner, D.I. Philip Jackson. Lulu realizes that she may not be able to solve this crime, even though her gut is telling her there's something she's missing. She's starting to wonder if there is even a crime to solve. It isn't until Lulu's own life is threatened that her concerns start to be taken seriously, as those who killed Emily may now also want her dead. So it is up to Lulu and Conrad, her partner in conversation and crime solving, to figure out what happened to Emily and who is responsible for her death, whether it's the distant son, the estranged best friend, the young doctor, or even the nursing home attendant. So this is The Cat Who Caught a Killer by L.T. Shearer. This is one of 2 books that I read for this week that feature a talking cat that can only talk to one person and who helps them solve crimes. Because why not? Apart from the talking cat element, this book sits very firmly in the mystery genre. It doesn't have any other fantastical elements included. Weirdly enough, the fantasy that I read for this week included no talking cats at all and just a very regular, normal cat. Because again, why not? Anyways, this book was enjoyable. It was a quick read. It has a very cozy vibe, as is probably pretty obvious. You definitely feel bad for Lulu with all the pain and tragedy that she's had to experience, and you're definitely drawn into her investigation. You want to find out what happens to Emily and what might be happening to Lulu as well. I would say that on the downside, all of the characters do come off as very entitled and privileged. Emily was extremely well off. Her estate is worth multi-million dollars. Even Lulu, who learns that since her husband died, she's not actually entitled to any of Emily's estate. She is also very well off and privileged and talks on multiple occasions about how she doesn't need money. She is okay. Simon left her a lot of money. She doesn't need money. And so I think that this puts a spin and a perspective onto the book that would make for a very different and possibly more impactful story if it had included a slightly different cast of characters. But that being said, I think that it definitely fits the cat theme. It 100% has a cat. It has a cat who talks. It has, I'm sorry, Green. I'm not trying to rub it in your face. Yes, it has a cat who's a big part of the story. He talks. He's there. He talks about all sorts of cat things. He likes very fancy bottled water, which again just kind of speaks to the privilege of characters who can buy expensive bottled water every time they go sit at a restaurant with their cat. Anyways, I'm a cat person, but I'm not that kind of cat person. I will say that I did insist on going home in between my wedding ceremony and my reception so that I could take a picture with my cat in my wedding dress. Yeah, I have that. But anyways, if you are looking for a quick, cozy, very British mystery, then I think that The Cat Who Caught a Killer by L.T. Shearer would be a good fit for that. Just don't expect too much substance below the surface.
Sadie, that was so catty.
Are you proud of yourself, Green? Are you very, very proud of yourself?
We do love a good pun here at Keep It Fictional. Well, thanks everybody for your picks today. We've had talking cats, we've had disappearing cats, we've had cats as medication, and we've had non-existent cats as well. Before we go, some food for thought. According to catwiki.com, a group of cats is called a clouder if they seem to know one another. Okay, so if they're acquainted with each other. How you would know this, I don't know. If the group of cats is not acquainted with each other, they are called a glaring, which I think is pretty clever. And a group of kittens is either a litter or a kindle. Again, if you have issue with this, take it up with catwiki.com. Otherwise, we hope everybody enjoyed today's episode of Keep It Fictional, brought to you by the Port Moody Public Library. Stay tuned for future episodes of our podcast for more great reads, not necessarily cat related. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening. If you like our show, please tell a fellow book lover about it. You can find a list of all the books we discussed in our show notes. Join us next week for another fun book chat. Until then, keep it fictional.